So it's good to see each and every one of you here today at our contemporary service at Ringgold United Methodist Church. Thanks so much for joining us. We're continuing our Recovery at Ringgold theme, which is all of the month of October. And what we're trying to do, among other things, is break down the barriers between those of us that are involved with recovery or familiar with recovery or identify with recovery, and those that perhaps do not. And with it, I'll just remind you that recovery happens every Thursday at 6:30. Regardless of rain, sleet, snow, or shine, regardless of holiday or not, Thursday, 6:30 is recovery worship. I really want to encourage every person to go at least one time, because if you go one time, you'll see that it's not strange, it's not weird, you actually have a good experience, and it's more likely that you'll invite someone else, you'll refer someone else much more effectively because you yourself have gone. And in fact, you might even be willing, after you go once, to then not only invite someone or refer someone, but offer, hey, I'll go with you. I've been before, I'll go with you. And so keep that in mind. Recovery is for everyone, whether it's a formal program or not. Part of what my ministry is about, a small sliver of it, is to help connect the dots for people and understand that recovery was built on Christian essentials, Christian spirituality. And what recovery does so well, whether we're talking about the formal 12-step program or like Recovery at Ringgold, like what we offer, is taking some of the best attributes, best aspects of the Christian faith with regard to spiritual practice and the spirituality that lies behind it, and then put it into practical measures that really make a difference in people's lives. And sometimes the church has lost that. There's a sense of, because we don't enter, lots of people, for example, lead worship. So you've seen a number of people say things this week, but we don't start off in worship, hey, I'm Chris Bryan, I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ, and I struggle with this, and this, right? Which it'd be interesting if we did. I'm not suggesting that we do, but it's that sort of thing that helps create an environment that is based on Christian spirituality, because that's really what the church is about, right? Is dropping pretenses and coming into a very genuine openness of faith with regard to our faith in Christ, but also in our faith in one another, loving one another. So anyway, I can go on and on about that, but it's really, really important. And so really recovery is for everyone, whether we're talking about specific program or not. And the other thing is we've traversed some ground, right? We start off with divorce and codependence, which is an issue that very few people attach to recovery. And then we did grief and depression, loneliness. And that's often something else that people don't necessarily attach, but they should. And then, of course, last week, Jerry brought a message about chemical and dependency and alcohol dependency. And that kind of makes sense that that's kind of what most people think of recovery. Today, I want to talk about something that, again, is a distant aspect, and that is overspending and debt. And this is something rarely, I mean, you might put grief and loneliness, you might put divorce or certainly codependence, but really, overspending and debt? Well, so here's my promise to you. Everybody that is worshiping here today in person and everybody joining us online, you're gonna get something out of this message, okay? It's either directly or indirectly, I promise. There's a word of the Lord in this for you. And it could be directly in relation to the money matters itself, something I say about the specific subject at hand, and that hits you in a particular way, whether this is really your main problem for you or not, or kind of be just in the general sense of the spirituality that I just referred to. The spiritual principles that are behind how you get help with regard to overspending and debt, which is in fact the same as any of us would get help for anything. And so I know there's a word of the Lord for everyone here today. That said, it should come as no surprise, and I don't think it will, to say that Americans in general are no stranger to debt and overspending. Most here, I think, know this, but yet what I thought you'd be interested in knowing is that as of this year, August 3rd, 2022, according to Axios News and the Wall Street Journal, balances on credit card debt are rising at the quickest pace in decades. Now, that reflects, of course, some to the extent of inflation, right? That has something to do with it, but it doesn't have all to do with it. And in part, that is because we know that not only are levels increasing, but the amount of new cards, new accounts that are being opened are also increasing. And while that might be also attributed to some extent, inflation, it really reflects a willingness and a desire to spend money anyway. And so, as a matter of fact, Axios and Wall Street Journal reported that Americans opened in the second quarter, that is April through June of this year, 233 million new accounts, which is the most in a single quarter since 2008. Credit card debt has surged in that same period, that's quarter two, by $46 billion, a 13% increase from the prior year, and that marks the biggest increase in over 20 years. It also would not surprise you to learn that Discover Card, American Express, MasterCard all increased their marketing costs by 50% in the same period. They're very interested in folks opening new accounts and using their cards. Americans' personal debt is currently $16 trillion. That's with a T, trillion. Most of that, of course, is mortgages, real estate, this sort of thing. However, almost $1 trillion of it is credit card debt. It's currently $890 billion is credit card debt. And if you're wondering, what are people purchasing on those credit cards? Well, it's kind of hard to say, but one way of indicating, finding an indication of what that could be is which companies are the largest by profit. For the 9th year in a row, ready? Walmart. Walmart, the biggest company in the world by profit, 9th year in a row. Number 2, Amazon. Good guess. There you go. All right, now we're thinking the same. Now, numbers 3, 4, 5, and 6, nobody really would relate to, at least it's not really pertinent to this sermon. But number 7, the world's 7th largest company by profit, Apple. All those phones, cell phones, the watches, all the gadgets, Apple. We don't have to have an addiction to buying things, to overspending, to debt. We don't have to have an addiction to recognize that it can be a problem. One of the verses in Scripture that's worth memorizing, and it's one that we read today, Proverbs 22, verse 7, the rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is a slave to the lender. This is a passage of Scripture that Dave Ramsey, in his Financial Peace course, goes over and over and over again. I've kind of gotten him off kilter with Dave. I'm not the biggest fan at this point. Nonetheless, that doesn't change the fact that a lot of the principles that he taught are very, very true and have been helpful to an awful lot of people for a long, long time. The rich rule over the poor, the borrower is a slave to the lender, absolutely. And it's a good principle to remember. I remember this illustration by a preacher years and years ago, and I've always used it since. Of course, I've had to change the numbers because the cost has increased, but a Disney trip. Family taking a Disney trip, which is more expensive than what we might imagine. Can be $5,000, could be $7,500. Talking about a family of 4, family of 5, something like that. The stay in the hotel, all the various things you might want to do, costs of restaurants and this sort of thing, $5,000 to $7,500, $5,000 to $7,500. Thing is, you put it on a credit card and don't pay for it but minimum payments, and it's going to end up, by the time you pay it off, costing twice as much. The one trip could have been 2 trips. And that's part of the problem, isn't it? When we buy things, especially on emotional kinds of things, without preparing for it, without budgeting for it, without planning for it. It's easy with the new car. Right? It's easy to get the new car that is a little bit more than we can afford. Right? I mean, we go out there and there's a certain level, we can't go over this, and then, gosh, the car you want, whatever, it's like, oh, but it's over that, and let's just do it. And you think, wow, that's really stretched us thin. That was way more than we thought. And then, you forgot about the insurance. And the insurance is going to go up because it's a new vehicle. You forgot about the taxes going up. You forgot about the price of tags going up because it's a more valuable vehicle. See, this is what happens to us. The home improvement project that starts off as a small one and then becomes a major one. And then you think, oh, man, we spent way too much more money on that. And a week later, a major appliance breaks. Right? It never fails, right? It's always this sort of thing. Now, we can all relate to that, but part of what this message is not only to share things like that we all can relate to, but then take it a next step further and say, listen, if we can relate to that, then you also have to understand that some might be here today or here earlier in the traditional service or worshiping online, that it's even worse for them. And I don't want you to be embarrassed for that. I'm glad you're here today. But there are some people that, it's so connected. Their desire to buy, their need to purchase becomes even worse. It's critical for them for their happiness. Their identity is so connected with getting new things, doing new things, going to places and that cost money, doing things that cost money. They have developed, and this is the key, a dependency. If you ever wonder about addiction, that's the word to look for. Am I dependent upon this? There's some things that we're healthy dependence, and other things not healthy. And at this point, I think, before I go any further, I gave this caution in traditional worship, and it seemed like it was appropriate, and so I'll say it again here. Resist the urge to elbow your spouse or the person next to you in the remainder of the sermon, right? I saw something, and maybe I should have said it earlier on in the sermon. Certainly in traditional, that was the case, because I started hearing the little snickerings, and the whispers, like, "That's you," So we don't want that to happen, right? It is a big issue in a lot of relationships. Karen and I are very blessed. We're on the same page. It was very, very important to us as we started our relationship. That was a big issue for her. It's a big issue for me. Are we on the same page with spending? Are we on the same page with saving? Are we on the same page with giving? Those are important things. The thing is, maybe this does apply to the person you're worshiping with today, but resist that urge to elbow them, because you know what? Again, as I said at the beginning, this message is for all of us. And what we always need to be is open to the word of the Lord for us. Whatever, now it may be for them, it may not, but what does it mean for us? And that's really, right, that's the spirit that we should come into worship with every time. Humble, like, speak, Lord, you're your servant, I'm listening. And then we're also there for other people, and that, greeting them and loving them, welcoming them, this sort of thing. Okay. On a very serious note, because we can all relate to the financial squabbles that any of us can get into. But for some people, this is real painful stuff. It's really wreaked havoc on their marriage, or their first marriage. Maybe it's really tough in a parent-kid. I know where I am in this stage of life, I relate more and more to this next thing, as a parent. Older kids growing up, late teens, early 20s, very concerned about how they're spending money, very concerned about their choices. As we get older, sometimes there's tension in relationships because it's an adult parent trying to give care to an adult child trying to give care to an aging parent. And there's some struggles there over financial management. I've seen siblings be tore up with one another because there wasn't unity on how best to steward mom and dad's resources on their behalf. So we understand, we can all kind of make fun, and because we all squabble at time to time. But for some people, this is truly menacing. It's a menacing issue. And what I want to say, if you relate to any of that in any way, I just want to say God bless you. God bless you if you've ever stayed awake at night worrying about some decision you made financially. God bless you if you've ever stayed awake at night thinking about a kid and what they're doing and their decisions. I mean, obviously all kinds of decisions, but in this case, like are they going to be homeless? Some of us, and I speak personally here, have been where a kid has been essentially homeless because of the choices they're making in their life. It's so difficult to deal with. God bless you. It's tough. God bless you if you've ever just been consumed by anxiety over worry on how to provide for the family, or how to get out of the hole you're in, or how to get the family out of the hole it's in. It may not even been anything that you personally did, but now you're in this mess with everybody else. God bless you if you've ever struggled with your faith in this issue. A lot of people really struggle. I mean, they're okay with almost everything, but it's not like they give up their faith, but it's like another layer of the issue, because they believe in God, they believe in Jesus, they believe that the Lord's going to take care of them, and yet they just feel so alone when it comes to this stuff because they are where they are. God bless you. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're listening, worshiping in person, online. I want everybody to feel God's presence today, and I invite you to receive God's promise that you can put your faith in the Lord and His grace, and often the help of others, the church, even if just from emotional support. And you can move out of a place that you're in into a place of peace and begin taking the right steps that you need in the right direction. God does want to take care of us. Always think of that hymn. God will take care of you. Always think of that hymn. God will take care of you, God wants to take care of us. May we honor Him. God wants to take care of us. May we honor Him with all of our wealth, with everything that we produce. Well, may we involve Him in every aspect of our life. Money matters is one of those places where oftentimes we keep God out. Like most of our areas of our life that are in need of recovering, the root cause isn't the issue itself. In this case, the issue really isn't debt or overspending. The real problem, like always, is the emotional and spiritual condition that's underneath it, that's driving it. And until that is addressed, it's a cycle of the addiction or the high or whatever it is, followed by the low, the shame and the guilt. There's, in this case, in this issue, the ecstasy of the purchase, which is normal for everyone to experience. But then, at some point in time, when it becomes a problem, that healthy kind of normal excitement over something new supplants, uproots at an emotional level the things that you really need. A confusion develops within the person of what a need versus a want really is. I'm going to speak more to this in a moment, and it's not intellectual. It's not that we'll say it in the language of you don't know the difference between a want and a need. We'll say you don't know, but they do know. It's not an intellectual problem. It's an emotional one. They know intellectually this is not a need, it's a want, but in their heart, in their emotions, it feels like I need this. And therein lies the struggle. At some point in time, like all persons that struggle and in need of recovery and freedom, there's a cycle that develops between a high, and then the equivalent low that comes after. The excitement of having more, having the new thing replaced oddly, strangely, with an absence. I mean, you have something new, but all of a sudden you're even more empty now than you had before, than you felt before. People can really beat themselves up at this point. And this low point that they find themselves in, that you might find yourself in, of shame or guilt, I mean, it just stays until one of two things happen. Until you start moving in the direction of emotional and spiritual health and getting some actually help for what's really hurting on the inside of you, or you get the next fix. I mean, that's the way it happens. And it's with overspending and debt, with codependency, with all sorts of issues. It's the cycle of shame or excitement or whatever the fix is, and then it moves to emptiness, and then it moves to guilt and shame. And we talk about it in recovery because the high of addiction drives essentially an even greater low, which in turn drives the need for addiction. It's vicious. And all of us can relate to it. Even if you're not, quote, addicted to something, you can relate to it if you've ever struggled with a habitual sin or some kind of thing in your life where you just can't seem to ever get rid of it, or this thing that just happens over and over again. You can identify with that cycle over and over again, that vicious cycle of falling and guilt and shame and then coming back. You can identify with that. All of us can identify with the area of finances and the idea of buyer's remorse. Very, very quickly, just in case you don't know what that is, most people know it. It's, you buy something that you probably shouldn't buy. It's typically a very large thing. And then after you buy it, felt really great at the time. Then after you buy it, you think, and you're not so sure you should have. And sometimes there are some things where there's actually written in the contract where you get your money back and get out of it. I remember we bought windows in my house in Canton. It was such a huge purchase. And I remember specifically a buyer's remorse clause. Sometimes cars have this, sometimes houses or jewelry even, I've seen it. And those of us that have had that experience, we know exactly, and for that moment in your life, you can relate to what these folks struggle with all the time. High, the sense of excitement, euphoria, and then, oh no, what have I done? Can I get out of this? And sometimes we've gotten out of it, and sometimes we couldn't get out of it. Sometimes we had to live with it and learn from it. Now just imagine though, if that was happening over and over and over again. I mean, that's a crazy train cycle, isn't it? When I preached a sermon this morning, one of the persons that was in traditional worship, she came out and she said, it was great. She said, listen, it's not just for, it's her problem was with deals, couponing, and I'm a couponer, I get it, right? But she had a friend, and I asked her permission to use this because I couldn't believe it. She had a friend that when her friend died had 26 pairs of size 16 black slacks with the tag still on them. I mean, she didn't need those pants, right? But something's driving that. And she also told me this, that when this person died, her last check bounced. And it was just kind of like her son said, that was her. That was the metaphor of her life. Listen, all of us, even if this isn't your deal, all of us would benefit from being aware of how our emotions can sway us. I mean, we can be the most intelligent person in the world, but let me tell you something, our heart pulls us in a different direction. Most of us know this when we get into love relationships, right? I mean, we can think one way, and then all of a sudden in our loving relationships, in our love interest, it's like the thinking goes out the window. It's just, we're driven. I learned early on when I first experienced the 12 steps, way back in seminary. I was downtown Atlanta, Trinity United Methodist Church, a transitional housing program for homeless guys. They did highs and lows every day as part of their plan. And I learned then how important it was, because I was shocked that was part of their strategic plan to get out of addiction and transition into a better life. Part of that strategic plan was every day they had to share highs and lows with one another. They had to share what was the best thing that happened, what was the worst thing that happened, and then oftentimes they would do an affirmation. A lot of times that would be a scripture or something, but it's like, hey, this is where my hope is right now. I'm really focused on this. And boy, was it a learning lesson to realize, gosh, that's so true. We have to be aware of where we are emotionally. Because if we get too high emotionally, too positive, whatever, we can become a whole other person. We can be full of ourselves and do things that we otherwise wouldn't do. Or if we get too low, we can just give up. We just say, whatever. It doesn't matter anyway. And then make choices and do things that we wouldn't otherwise normally do. And so that's, all of us would do better by being more open and more vulnerable and sharing with one another. Our youth group on Wednesday nights, they have game night, 6 to 8. And it's not just games. First of all, the games they do are very purposeful. It's about connection. But number two, they have other spiritual things that they do, including sharing highs and lows. They call them happies and crappies, right? But that's part of the strategic, that's a spiritual thing. To be able to share, this was good, this was bad. It's amazing how that kind of openness begins to open people up to share and think about other parts of their lives. A good question for you to ask yourself is, when am I at my worst? When am I most vulnerable to being somebody I don't want to be? Is it when things are great, or is it when things are terrible? And the truth is we're vulnerable at both, but probably one or the other is worse for us. And in my experience in ministry of 26 years as a pastor, I got to tell you, there's an awful lot of us that are at our worst when things are the best. It seems like a lot of Christians kind of hold it together. When things are falling apart, they kind of know where to turn. But when it's like success and things are going really well, I mean, it's like a half a second later, they're taking off their Christian hat. They're taking off, they're on their own, man. They're feeling pretty good. And, about to drive something of some part of their life into the next ditch, What's your vulnerable place? Be aware. Know thyself. Be alert, right? Be alert, stay focused, know thyself. That's part of the sober-mindedness that the New Testament teaches. All right, almost finished with the sermon. Let me tell you a few other things really quickly. I want to say this. Sometimes when it seems like the problem is money, it's not. One of the things I've discovered over the years is that money typically is the first pain point when something else is wrong in our life. Now, it could be a money problem. It could be financial problems. It could be overspending, and just like the person I just referred to, that the 26 pairs of slacks, but or it could be that you have something else going on, some other addiction, some other problem, some other issue, and it's just surfacing. Oftentimes, the first place things surface is money, and so just be aware of that. Okay, remember, even if it is money, it's still an emotional issue. It's still emotional, spiritual. So regardless of what it is, that's where we're going. Secondly, and I already hinted at this earlier, if it is a money issue, it's not an intelligence problem. We've grown more sensitive as a culture, I think, to mental illness, although we got a lot of work to do. We've grown a little bit more sensitive to divorce. We got more work to do, but we've grown. when it comes to money matters, boy, we are really rough on people. And sometimes our loved ones, we're the roughest on. And if it's us, we can be really rough on ourselves. I did it again. I can't believe I bought that. I can't believe I'm so stupid. Listen, it's not an intelligence problem. I've met people that struggled with this issue, overspending and debt in their personal lives, that professionally handled multi-million-dollar accounts and were very good at their job. But that was their job, and this was their personal life. And their personal life and their personal spending had to do with what was broken on the inside of them and what they needed to be healed that never got a chance to be healed. In fact, they don't even know what's wrong with them. It's so easy for us, if we have a loved one, to say, just stop. But if you think about that, like any problem, like can you imagine telling an alcoholic would just stop drinking? Most of us at this point know that's really not the advice. I mean, it's just not that simple. And with any issue with regard to recovery, needing recovery, saying just stop that ain't gonna fix it. It's not a lack of intelligence, it's about emotional and spiritual health. Very quickly, I know I'm over time, but I want to tell you, people that really struggle with this issue, I just want to make sure it's personal today. Because there's some of you that maybe will identify with this, or maybe you're married to somebody like this, and I don't mean in a chastising way, but like in a real serious, I want you to know that there's help for you. Or you were raised by somebody that was like this, so one of your parents was, or your kids, you're seeing your kids develop these patterns. Some really signs that this is where their brokenness is evidencing itself, is when they've gotten themselves in debt, and by the act of grace of God or some sort of luck, they get out of that, and like within days they're back in debt again. You help them pay off a credit card, and they've opened a new one, and they do so with the best intentions. They're going to do it right this time, right? These folks will shower just lovely gifts on people, because again, that's where they're coming from. Maybe that's what they want, and I'm not talking down about them. This is the way it is, and so they'll even bypass actual needs, like something that's practical that really could help a person, and buy instead something that's lavish and extravagant because they want to do that. They truly want to show that person they love them, and so again, they've just so confused at this point, so confused wants and needs, because it's not up here, it's here, right? A want feels like a need. These are folks that, other signs, they'll, all of us can be jealous. All of us can be jealous at times with regard to somebody having something that we don't, or being able to go somewhere we can't afford. But these folks, they develop, it's an all-consuming thing. And if you've ever been in a conversation with someone else, or if you've ever heard yourself where it's like you just can't stop talking about it, something's broken, okay? Or it's the other thing. Some people, they just have to make more money. Now listen, all of us would like to make more money. All of us are open to a raise. There's nothing wrong with that. But I've met people that are obsessed with it to the point that they sacrifice and sabotage their job when they're perfectly happy with where they are. But because they're so demanding and needing more money, they'll sabotage it. Sometimes it's just an insecurity. People, because of the way they grew up or because something happened in their life, they're so scared. They're so scared. And the way they've compensated is to try to make more money or to have more things to protect themselves. Sometimes it begins just with an unwillingness to be generous. Now, don't overhear me on that. I'm not trying to but sometimes that's where the first alert sign is wait a minute, I'm so reluctant. Why am I so reluctant to be more generous? So with all that, if you relate to any of it, or you know somebody does, how about recovery on Thursdays? If not here, somewhere. Nobody knows why you're going. You could be going there to support someone else. Nobody ever asks. Why not try recovery? Why not get your life back? Do you need a financial peace class or some sort of small group on money matters? Yeah, probably, sure. It helps all of us make better financial decisions. But for the last time, please hear me. It's not about money. right? It's about what's going on inside of us, what's going on up here, and really what's going on down here. If we're going to experience the kind of change that we need, and this is with anything we're struggling with, it requires us being more honest with God, and that ultimately means we have to be more honest with ourselves. It requires us accepting God's love in ways that we haven't accepted God's love yet, because most of the time we accept God's love for all those things that we understand versus those things that we really need to accept God's love for, which is the stuff we don't understand about ourselves. That we accept God's love all the way to include our previous choices, our prior attitudes, our prior actions, accepting God's love all the way to our current hang-ups, all the way to and through our chronic, ongoing failures, allowing God to love us in spite of those things, love us through those things, love us even as we continue to battle those things. It takes that. And it requires us being open with others. And it may start off with just sharing your highs and lows, but you have to start opening up to other people. That's part of how God's grace works in our lives. And the thing is, it's not just about getting your life back. You can actually get new life you haven't experienced before. In the end, we could read a whole lot of Bible verses. There's 63 verses on money and in Proverbs alone. But at the end of the day, what you're going to read a lot about is how God wants us to be generous spirited, generous with our lives, because he's generous. And God wants us not to have broken relationships because of money, but whole relationships. You're going to find that God is very concerned about us being grateful people because we act differently, we think differently when we're grateful. We'll really be grateful until we learn contentment. We learn to be content with where we are right now. And both those things, gratefulness and contentment, take an ongoing trust in God. But as we trust in the Lord, we can accept those things that maybe we're struggling against right now, and we need to accept them because like it or not, accept or not, it's true. Money, giving, spending, debt, all these things are intertwined with our faith, whether we like that or not. And the more we accept it and the more we invite God into it, the more healthy it becomes and the more whole we become. And if you need, check out Recovery. There's a whole bunch of us in there for a whole bunch of things. You'd be welcome. Let's pray. God, even as we prayed at the very beginning of worship today, you're Lord of all. Lord of all. You are King of everything. And so it's fitting for us to lay down at your feet bank accounts and investments and credit cards and debts. That's hard for us, Lord, because we don't typically think like that. We kind of let you handle parts of our lives, maybe even the most of our life. But then that stuff we kind of keep to ourselves. Help us to not exclude you, but to bring you in by opening ourselves up more to you, by being even more honest with ourselves. And yes, even being honest with other people. Trusting in that vulnerability that you'll use it to change us and to work on us and to work through us. Help us, because some of us are so scared to talk about these things, so scared of being judged or not loved, or Lord, help us to let your love get deep, deep inside of us, past those points that we've stopped, past those points that we've accepted, or that we could understand that you love us. Help us to let you love us even to our current chronic hang-ups and slip-ups, and let us accept you past that point. To love us even as we continue to battle things in our lives. We need you. We need each other. And we thank you for Recovery and the ministry of the church, which helps us move beyond where we are into the new life that you intend for each of us to have. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.